4 years ago, I went on a journey to beat Terraria with a flare gun. I had streamed it on Twitch and it was my first serious Terraria challenge, and I finished it. It took about 110 hours. In the time since, I've beaten the game with a copper shortsword and a lawnmower, but that first challenge has always held a special place in my heart. The flare gun fundamentally is different from those two weapons because it allows attacking from a distance. It's the in-depth information like that that makes my videos so helpful. The copper shortsword and lawnmower, by necessity, are incredibly boring to use because you have to build your character in such a way where you can take damage constantly and can't really die. That's not fun, but with the flare gun, you can actually interact with the bosses. Instead of bashing your head into a wall, you're playing minigames. And I stopped smashing my head into brick walls for fun back in the 2nd grade. Flare gun only was the only low damage challenge that I found genuinely fun. And with 1.4.4 adding coast flares, I decided it was time to take a trip down memory lane and redo the first major challenge I had ever done, with a few extra twists along the way. Every single boss has an additional stipulation tied to it, and they get intense. Only one stipulation applies at a time, and as soon as I kill a boss, I reveal the next one, which applies until we kill that boss. So, not only are we using a weapon that deals incredibly low damage, we're doing it with no movement keys, blindfolded, with voice controls, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. But we're not starting with any of that. For the Eye of Cthulhu, it's simple. We can't have any defense until we kill the boss. No armor, no accessories with defense reforges, no buffs, no food. We're also setting the difficulty to master mode, which means we can neither fight back nor survive attacks against anything. And we set off to find a flare gun, because we don't have one yet, and we can't progress until we do. I need to trap or avoid enemies, as most will kill me in 2 to 3 hits. It's a gold chest loot, so I'm just browsing the cavern layer. After about an hour, I finally come across one, and the challenge actually starts. The weapon of mass destruction has been unlocked. The flare gun deals 3 classless damage, 2 from the weapon itself and 1 from the ammo. Because of that, it is completely pointless to attempt to buff the damage of the weapon in any way. Classless damage can neither critically hit nor be increased. Even if we had a huge number of damage buffs, it wouldn't affect the flare gun. The only way to actually increase its damage would be to have plus 100% ranged damage bonuses to bring the ammo's damage up to 2, because the ammo isn't classless. But there's a little-known game mechanic called Defense, which is going to reduce both 4 and 3 damage down to 1. There is absolutely no reason to ever use damage-boosting armor, reforges, or potions with a flare gun. It's not all doom and gloom, though. While the projectile damage itself is pitiful, the flare gun does light things on fire, and it does a pretty damn good job at doing that. It's got infinite piercing, long range, and inflicts a guaranteed debuff lasting either 5 or 10 seconds. On fire is 4 DPS, so the flare gun is essentially just dealing 4 DPS to enemies. And because Relogic dropped acid when making 1.4.4, we now have coast flares in hard mode, which deal 24 DPS. That's 6 times as much. Those didn't exist when I did it the first time. Compared to the copper shortsword and lawnmower, the flare gun actually deals pretty good damage. I'd say it's the best, worst weapon in the game. Since we can't get any armor and we're already almost at max HP just from looking for the flare gun, there's not much to do before the eye. I would like to break a shadow orb for goblins, but I decided to pop over to the snow biome and get a blizzard in a bottle, which was a simple task for somebody with as much Blood Moon happened. The piercing of the flare gun really shines here. Just make rough semicircles, shoot the guys, don't get hit. A money trough would be nice. That's about the only useful I've watched this clip back 4 times, and I still can't see the zombie before it hits me. He just bursts out of the shadow realm to obliterate me. That's the real challenge of the flare gun, trying to tell what the hell is going on with the ground covered in blue fire. Well, the Blood Moon ends. I ghosted up some pylons, making sure to block off. You know, it is significantly more difficult playing the game with 0 defense when you can't kill anything. I can't do knockback. I can't kill them. If something corners me, I just die. The tree screwed me over here, and I go back to talk it out, work through our differences. I dropped the difficulty down to expert for the eye, and the reason for that is that I can't actually deal enough damage to kill it on master mode in one night. That means I either have to kill the master eye with unlimited time and ammo, or the expert eye with limits to both. The latter is more interesting, so that's what we're doing. I mentioned limited ammo. This is the first fight where the projectile cap matters. Essentially, I can only fire 1,000 shots every 10 minutes. If I shoot 1,000 times over the span of the night, I cannot fire more flares and can't deal more damage. I need to deal 3,640 damage in 1,000 shots. It's doable, but I can't afford to miss much. His phase 2 defense drops to 0, so that's when I start laying into the eye for maximum damage. I've got enough mobility to comfortably evade his dashes, and with the negative defense that the Eye of Cthulhu gets near death, we are hitting for 18 damage in a single shot. On the bright side, we've now unlocked defense. On the other hand, it's time to unbind WASD. It's just King Slime though. Easy, okay. A little less easy now. My movement options are restricted to just my grappling hook and double jump, and we're back to master mode. I have to press spacebar to cancel mid-grapple and fling myself. Thankfully, I found a web slinger, enabling a lot of new angles to shoot from. But between my low defense, damage, and the sheer number of projectiles, it proves to be quite a challenging fight. At this point, I just want King Slime over with, but I don't have a slime crown, and the only altars are very, very far away. So, the monumental task of hooking across the world begins, and finally, we arrive at our destination. Okay, eventually I managed to make a slime crown, and King Slime actually poses significantly more danger to me than the eye, because I can't run away from him. We actually come extremely close to dying, which is a nightmare, not because I care about dying, but because I just spent 20 minutes getting to a demon altar. With the threat of having to do that again hanging over me, I get it together and do the rest of the fight without issue. For the Brain of Cthulhu, we are disabling all UI. That means I can't see health bars, damage numbers, the cursor, or even my inventory. I set up my hotbar with bombs before we start so I can swap to them when needed and roll out to the Crimson. We have got a whopping 9 defense before potions, and we're still on master mode. The brain will rip us to pieces if it hits us. I grab some healing furniture with empty slots on my hotbar, and the journey is honestly pretty pleasant. The game is very peaceful with no UI. I use Smart Cursor to place platforms and torches, but these blood crawlers are proving to be a monumental pain. I don't have the damage to kill them, and I can't see my cursor to place blocks to wall them off. I loop them around a bit, eventually get my cursor placement correct to block them, and get to summoning the brain. The flare gun is actually quite good against phase 1. The infinite piercing makes short work of the creepers. But I can't tell how much HP I have, what debuffs I've been inflicted with, or even where I'm aiming. And that's how we start phase 2. We do not have good damage here. I need to aim without seeing my cursor, which only gets more difficult as the brain's clones appear. Thankfully, unlike with the lawnmower, we can actually knock it back, but this is a long, slow, and extremely dangerous fight. We might have come extremely close to dying, I have no way to know. On the other hand, I actually found identifying the real brain much easier without UI. The lack of visual clutter on screen makes noticing the burning particles much easier. What's important is that I stay calm, and after 8 more minutes I finish off the brain. After 4 hours, we've got 3 bosses down, and that's still a faster start than Elden Ring's DLC. This is a drunk world. Now, I could be playing on Don't Dig Up to bypass time limits, but there's a tiny issue with that. Don't Dig Up sucks. It's not a fun seed for something like this. It's dark, so the stream would look awful. You can't use huge sections of the world. I would rather just pause time and actually have fun. That means we can fight the Eater of Worlds. Unfortunately, we have to pull out the red flares against the Eater. I'm team blue flares. Red flares are a sin against God, and all who wield them will face judgment in death. A lot of people don't actually know that red flares are different from blue flares. Blue flares shoot a piercing projectile that inflicts on fire. Red flares, meanwhile, shoot bouncy dynamite. Most people just never use the flare gun, so they never find out. But blowing up antlions is not my job. It's just a hobby. I find it emotionally fulfilling. We are locked in for a cage match against the Eater of Worlds. Underground corruption, bouncy dynamite, and a hell of a lot of collateral damage. I break Crimson Hearts first because the boss summoning counter is shared between the two, and move on to face my foe. And the red flares fly out faster than I can keep track of. Chaotic explosions going off left and right, the arena falling to pieces, and somehow, I'm still alive. One last stream of dynamite takes out the Eater, landing us at the feet of Deerclops, who were fighting blindfolded. Hi. Unlike the other stipulations, this one is only going to apply during the actual boss fight. After getting the summoning item and building an arena, the battle begins. I'm doing my best to bob and weave back and forth, but the shadow hands and random zombie are not making it easy on me. Thankfully, Deerclops doesn't deal too much damage to me. It's enough to hurt, but I can take some hits. That is, until my buff wears off and I die. I grab a bass statue and plan to fight her again, but there's a small problem. She's still alive. It makes my life easier, so I go in for round 2, and this time, after about 40 minutes of shooting her blindfolded, she finally dies. The blindfold comes off and the controller comes out. I honestly was expecting the game to be a lot worse on a controller. It's really not too bad to control, all things considered. The auto-aiming leaves a lot to be desired, but dodging was easy enough. It's not the most interesting, and I get bored and decide to finish her off on the surface for fun. That leaves just Skeletron before the wall, and finally, We are free to play the game normally. No gear or movement stipulations, no weird controls. We are on Legendary though. Using T-Edit, I swapped to a For the Worthy seed. That means Skeletron is going to have massive speed and damage increases along with spawning Dark Casters in Phase 2. I take advantage of my newfound freedom and ability to drink red potions to finish up mining for items. I get Frostbark boots, build an arena, blow up a path to the surface, and get to work. The large world isn't doing me any favors though. Skeletron annihilates me on my first attempt. I was too slow making my way out. On the second one, I don't give him as much time to hit me, but Skeletron has an adaptive velocity. He accelerates as much as he needs to catch up to you. I can't make it fully to the surface without him reaching me. Once we got up here though, I learned two things. The first is that the flare gun is actually a meta pick for Legendary Skeletron. It cannot be reflected when his skull is spinning, making it just better than everything else. The second is that Dark Casters are really difficult to deal with when you can't effectively kill them and can't destroy their water bolts. We just permanently have 6 teleporting enemies that knock me back into Skeletron's skull, which kills me in 2 hits. I need more speed. I need to panic. Necklace. The speed boost from the panic necklace lets me easily avoid getting comboed, but that's hardly enough to win the fight by itself. Skeletron does still two-shot me, the Dark Casters still do a lot of damage. It is a long and challenging fight, but I prove that the flare gun is the optimal weapon against Skeletron in Legendary mode. The final challenge in pre-hard mode is the Wall of Flesh, and before we start that, I've got an important question for you. Do you like seeing the game? Let's be honest, nobody does, and the blindfolded challenge was unfair to you because only I got to be blindfolded. That's why we've got brainsuckler blindness on now. There was dungeon looting and arena building, who cares? We have to fight the Wall of Flesh on Classic because we just functionally cannot deal enough damage on higher difficulties before reaching the projectile cap. We need to do 8,000 damage with 1,000 flares, and the Wall of Flesh is immune to on fire. We need to do that while having extremely restricted visibility and within the natural arena that a drunk world spawns with, because I can't be bothered to build one. It sounds easy, right? I mean, it's classic mode, and yeah, in any other situation, with any other weapon, this would be a walk in the park. But my defense isn't as high as it could be, it's very difficult to see what's happening, and I need to stay point blank and fire upwards. It's a battle of attrition and resource management. I need to simultaneously kill the hungry, keep myself alive, and whittle down the wall within my 1,000 flares. And I am having a very difficult time keeping myself alive at close range. You can see the game better than I can in this recording because I upped the brightness in OBS. I can't see the wall at all, but I can salvage it. I can pull it together. Until we run out of space. The lava lake has ended, and now I need to navigate uneven terrain that I can barely see. The lava gives me a slight sense of the terrain layout, and I give it my best effort, but it's not enough. We're down to 1 water walking potion, so if I mess up again, it'll be quite annoying to gather resources. This time, I'm much more aggressive with taking out the hungry and attacking the wall at the start. I was too passive trying to conserve ammo, which led to me running out of space in the previous attempt. I also extend my house for the guide further left to give me more time. If you're not aware, you can just dunk the guide in lava to summon the wall. That's good, because demons can't be lit on fire and getting a doll would be a nightmare. The fight's going well, but the arrival of Hellbats puts a serious dent in my combat capabilities. I can't stop them from hitting me, and I can't afford to spend time and ammo killing them either. We're stuck below 100 HP, taking damage and recovering my last few hearts, and the wall is still at half HP. But I kill the bats, and the wall is now defenseless. I'm able to knock it down to 400 HP. And then we run out of space. The bats slowed down my DPS, and we fell into the same trap as last time. But I've learned what the terrain is like. I know what I need to do, and I am not dealing with killing sharks with a flare gun. I've recovered some HP, but it's going down much faster than I can handle, and the longer the fight goes on, the more difficult navigation becomes. I need to out-DPS it, but I get snagged on a wall. I go from 80 HP to 60, 40, 20, down to my last heart, and with my potion on cooldown, the fight is ending here. I can't afford to take another hit, and neither can the wall. At the literal last second, we emerge victorious, and we were only 35 flares from the projectile cap. In every sense, the fight exhausted all of my resources to their limits. The first boss of hard mode is going to be the Destroyer, and he's just going to be really long, so we can go about freely in early hard mode and get the only damage upgrade we're ever going to get: Coast Flares. Made by combining 33 flares with a Cursed Flame item, they function exactly like regular flares down to the base damage of 1, but inflict Cursed Inferno instead of on fire. There are, by the way, 6 different flares: Red, Blue, Shimmer, Rainbow, Spelunker, and Cursed are the only ones that don't inflict on fire. Coast Inferno is an unbelievable increase in our damage. It's literally 6 times as powerful, and there are very few enemies immune to it. Golem, during the original flare gun run, took like 9 hours because of on fire immunity, but he's not immune to Coast Inferno, so it took way less time here. Just look at what it does to this wyvern. It's genuinely very powerful, for a bad weapon. I mean, we're in competition with the lawnmower. This is godlike in comparison. The only thing is, we need to actually kill clingers to get Coast Inferno, so I go about making a little farm underground and up the spawn rates with Journey mode. It's painful, but eventually we get a huge supply. I use them to take out a sand elemental and craft a bundle of balloons, then we rematch the wall of flesh. This time, we're on expert mode to get a demon hurt. Using the all-powerful coast flares, we can actually kill the wall on expert mode. Easily. This is 72 DPS. Unlike the original run, I'm not going to be down an accessory slot in hard mode. The Destroyer is one of the 2 bosses actually immune to Coast Inferno, but he's also 3 times his normal length, and we have infinite piercing. Damage isn't as much of an issue as staying alive is. I decided I'm not going to use any magic conch or teleportation strategies, and I only have 69 defense. We could die. We take 20 or 30 damage per laser. Having the Destroyer this big breaks a few things. We're actually reaching the NPC limit and probes aren't spawning anymore. It's a long fight, but the bisexual flares leave me victorious. It wouldn't be a Destroyer fight if I didn't give the boss a fighting chance at the end though. With a permanent gravity reversal for the twins, I can't use platforms anymore. I need to grapple them to remain airborne and put a minecart track in the sky to give me a safe place to fight where enemies can't spawn. But the game isn't going to make this easy on me, as we get a solar eclipse the morning after killing our first mech. I can grapple the ceiling floor, but that doesn't do anything to help with vampires. Dodging a half-bat, half-fighter AI enemy with reversed gravity is not a fun time. With the standard flares, my strategy was pretty much just to spam shots whenever possible, because they were essentially free. As long as I didn't hit the projectile cap, it was worth shooting as much as possible. But now, with coast flares, I want to do the exact opposite. Adding on 1 damage from a flare projectile when you're doing 4 DPS is a great improvement. Adding it to 24 DPS is almost nothing, and the coast flares can't just be purchased infinitely. At this point, this is our maximum DPS. Nothing we do for the rest of the game will be better than this. You might be wondering about stacking debuffs. Coast Inferno is 24 DPS and On Fire is 4 DPS. If I swapped ammo between shots, could I get up to 28 DPS? Well, you would think so, but no. Damage over time debuffs are bugged in Terraria. I haven't checked every single one, but at the very least, these 2 cannot be stacked. I first noticed this back when I killed the Daytime Empress of Light with a copper short sword, but when enemies have multiple debuffs applied, only the strongest one takes effect. Pay attention to Spasmatism's health here. When he has Coast Inferno, he takes damage in increments of 10. When he has On Fire, he takes damage in increments of 1. When he has both debuffs, you can see the green and orange fire together, he's still only taking damage in increments of 10. But 24 DPS is plenty for him. I can't dodge Retinazer perfectly with the reversed gravity, but we've got enough health regeneration to stay in the fight. For Skeletron Prime, we're going to 2x speed. And I mean, really, as long as I can dodge, this is just doubling our DPS. And my reaction time is twice as good as a normal human, so this is basically just playing the game normally. I got enough bows to make hollowed armor, but our defense is far from perfect, and we're on master mode. Because of his speed, I effectively need to predict what he's going to do before he does it to dodge it. But this is easy mode. Honestly, partway through the fight, I was barely even looking at the screen anymore. The fight is just pure muscle memory. Let's take it faster. 4x speed, raindrops falling at the speed of bullets, Skeletron moving like a freight train, and jump scare wyverns popping in at hyperspeed. And our flare gun, of course, is doing 96 DPS. The stipulations for the mech bosses have been a walk in the park. That makes Plantera the hyper-aggressive pitbull that chases you for looking in its general direction. All I've got is a B-mount, a tendon hook, and a dream. Plantera will rip me to pieces in seconds, and I need to dodge her for over half an hour. But before we can even consider that, I need an arena. I need to hollow out a large area with no accessories to evade enemies and very low damage. That sucked. I put NPCs nearby to reduce spawn rates, but there was still a slog. There were a few different ways I could approach this fight. I could try getting a powerful mount, I could try to cheese her, or I could use what is easily the most overpowered potion in the game, the Featherfall potion. I don't use these too often, but they are obscenely effective at what they do. There is a reason almost every speedrun you see will use them. They give you control over how strongly gravity affects you. You can fall at a slower speed by default, you can press down to fall at a normal speed, or you can press up to fall at a greatly reduced speed. It also allows you to propel yourself much further with grappling hooks, and minecarts, although I didn't use those ones. A featherfall potion with a decent grappling hook is able to comfortably dodge almost anything with a little practice, and I'm not even particularly good at using them. They are very powerful, but this is an endurance test. I still take knockback and immense damage when I mess up. Her first phase is easy enough, but phase 2 is what starts to give me trouble. I've got some gravitation potions to assist me, along with asphalt lining the floor and ceiling, but getting hit for just shy of 200 damage and taking knockback, which can easily chain into a second and third hit, is leaving me seriously wounded. I try my best, but a spore ends up killing me, as it's quite difficult to destroy them with the flare gun. I get some life fruit and try again. The first phase is underwhelming, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about the disappointment that was Shadow of the Erdtree. It's just like a regular fort from the base game, populated with regular enemies from the base game. Why is this part of the DLC I paid $40 for? I did that a lot during this stream. She kills me again, though. The spores, high damage, and knockback are a serious issue. There's nothing to do but try again. These fights are extremely short compared to what I've done in the past. At this point, I've mastered my mobility options and how Plantera is behaving in this arena. I need to stay away from her, stay aware of her spores, and be absolutely certain to avoid getting stun-locked. A large part of this strategy is despawning the tendrils on her hooks, which allow me much more freedom when moving. By getting the hooks off screen, the attached tendrils can despawn independently of Plantera, and those tendrils never come back, unlike the main body ones. So, Plantera died, which means we move on to Golem, whose stipulation is voice controls. Yeah, I'm using voice attack to translate spoken words into key presses. Honestly, I can't really even describe what this is like. Just imagine a full second of input delay, only being able to press one button at a time, and trying to navigate the expert mode jungle temple like that. And that's just to summon Golem. We still need to kill him. And sure, Golem is an easier boss, but nothing is easy when you're playing the game like this, especially considering we don't have a tank build. After a lot of pain and some off-screen mining, we finally get to talk more shit about Elden Ring's DLC. Oh my god, the whole thing is just Leyndell, but there's like mold growing on the shower curtain near the Erdtree. R'hllon is just like guy with sword, except guy with sword does like 12-hit combo. You think you know who the final boss is gonna be, and it's just fucking guy with sword! You go up to it expecting one thing, and who is it? It's just a fucking guy with a sword! With two swords. All the side dungeon bosses, they're all just guys with swords. There's like the Eastern Nameless Mausoleum, guy with sword, big katana. Guy immediately getting in, Black Jail Knight, guy with sword. You're walking around fighting knights that are just guys with swords that have designs as interesting as the bosses. And then get to Golem. And he's not following us, so a little more off-screen mining and the altar moves itself closer. Getting him from there to the arena is difficult, but we finally get back, and he just leaves. Again. At this point, I decide on a small change. I'm going to control the A and D keys myself and use voice controls for jumping, attacking, and aiming, because that way, at least I can ensure Golem won't despawn. With that, I'm able to actually kill Golem, although it didn't do my throat any favors. Duke Fishron on a dance pad is next. Or, well, he would be, except I died in his third phase, then started streaming Elden Ring's DLC on a dance pad, which was both a miserable experience and broke my dance pad. So, Lunatic Cultist. I did not feel like fighting the Lunatic Cultist. I've done it before, and it was just gonna be awful. He's immune to all debuffs, which means we're just slowly hitting him for 1 damage per shot. I played with him for a while, but after half an hour I just pulled out my pickaxe axe and beat him to death with that. He might be immune to Cursed Inferno, but he's not immune to an axe in the back of his skull. I didn't bother with the stipulation here, I just wanted this fight over with as soon as possible. There's no way to make it interesting or fun. Coast Flares, thankfully, do quite well against the pillar enemies. The Solar Pillar proved to be a bit annoying, but overall they went down without much trouble. The Moonlord himself is up next, and our final stipulation is a control inversion. Basically, permanent confusion. Up is down is up, left is right, and right is left. When using a low damage weapon, the entire Moonlord fight revolves around his healing mechanic. Essentially, when he licks you, he sucks out your soul in a little healing pill. If he swallows the pill, he heals for 1000 HP. There are a few ways to prevent this: destroying your soul, swapping out the pills for a placebo, or using teleporters. I'm doing that last one. Whenever his tongue comes out, we need to teleport away to make sure he can't lick us, and if he does lick us, that we're far enough away that his medication can't reach him. With steampunk wings, a magic mirror, and some clever teleporter placements, that's easy enough. But we still need to stay alive and kill him. He's got over 200,000 HP on expert mode, and we don't have exceptional defenses or mobility. We don't have an insignia or shrimpy truffle, and I've got beetle armor, which is good if I'm taking hits occasionally, but if I get hit multiple times in quick succession, I will die. His eyes also have quite small hitboxes, and flare velocity isn't fantastic. Phase 1 is easy enough, the healing is on a long cooldown, and the dodging motions are simple. Plus, he has 3 different eyes to shoot, so I can inflict all 3 with debuffs at once. Phase 2 has none of those. I try my best to synchronize their release so that their attack cycles are lined up. Their attack cycle begins just after the eyeball attack that comes after their death ray, but I'm working with a slow projectile and damage over time debuffs, so my timing wasn't perfect. They're attacking at a similar time, but it's a long enough gap that I can't iframe them. So, there I am. 2 True Eyes of Cthulhu on the cusp of Phase 2 and a flare gun. And I'm dying. I need to prevent his healing at all costs, but doing that is putting me directly in the path of the True Eyes. He is not gonna beat me that easily, though. The True Eye Phantasmal Death Rays, which are their most deadly attack, do not work the same way as the Moonlord's. Their death rays are stopped by blocks, so I can shield myself indoors while they use them. But I used platforms and not a door for the teleporter rooms, which is letting them hit me. I pop out his final eye, leaving me at a critically low HP, and start kiting him across the world. Now that his eyes are all dead, his healing doesn't matter until I start attacking his chest, so I use this opportunity to heal up and craft a door to put down. It's not perfect, but it's enough. I start at home. I run out the door to the right, flying diagonally in the air, which lets me outrange the True Eye lasers. I teleport home when his tongue releases, then run left out into a teleporter across the world where I do the same thing. I take shelter in the teleporter rooms from the laser beams whenever it's necessary and slowly take down the remaining 75,000 HP. And that is Terraria with a flare gun. For the second time. Also, I was blindfolded. I don't really think calling this flare gun only is doing it justice. This is a way more enjoyable challenge than Copper Shortsword and Lawnmower only, and if you want to do a low damage challenge, even just for 1 or 2 bosses, I would suggest trying out the flare gun. It took us 40 hours to beat the game like this, which is half as long as just the Moonlord with a lawnmower. Most of these fights took less than an hour. The flare gun is actually pretty good in hard mode. Unironically, it's very effective at applying a powerful debuff to wyverns and crowds. You can swap to it with Smout Tool and just shoot a flare which will do 240 damage over the course of 10 seconds to everything it hits. 1.4.4 made the flare gun absurdly powerful in comparison to what it once was. I don't think any weapon in the history of the game has ever been buffed to the same degree. It really is the best worst weapon.